Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Contract Renewal Management webinar given by Crow Canyon Systems. I am Scott Restivo, and I'm going to just be introducing this webinar, and then Jeff Priest, our VP of Sales, will run it and do the presentation. So to get started, first of all, as I said, welcome. Thank you for joining. And I'll let Jeff take over from here and run the show. So go ahead, Jeff.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Again, thanks for joining. We're excited to show you what we have today with our contract renewal management solution. But before we get started in the demo, I know you guys have all come to see the actual product that we have to offer, but wanted to start a little bit with the overview of who we are and our history. So this is the agenda that we're gonna cover today. So we'll talk briefly about who is Crow Canyon, who we are, where we came from. Also, we'll kind of explain what we're going to show you today, talking through sort of the managing contract renewals process. We'll jump right into the demo, and hopefully during the demo you will ask questions as they come to mind, and we're going to try something a little bit different today. Usually we will have a Q&A session at the end. Maybe you'll save up some questions towards the end, but we'll try to address some of these questions as they come up during the demo, as it's sort of relevant to what we're talking about at that time. So bear with us if we stumble over some of those and getting those questions answered real time, but ask those questions and then we'll go ahead and cover those as we're going through the demo. So first of all, Crow Canyon, who are we? What do we do? Well, we've been around for quite a long time. We've been around almost 20 years. We were founded in 1999, developing solutions on the Microsoft stack. In 2001, as SharePoint was released, that became a platform of choice for us to develop these solutions that we've been developing previously on this SharePoint environment. Today, currently, we have almost 6,000 installations worldwide. We've done hundreds of custom development projects for customers. Many of those, when we say custom development, many of those weren't just start from scratch development projects, but were actually based on our framework that we have in place for many of our solutions. So as we've been going throughout this sort of journey, we have learned a lot about SharePoint. We've learned a lot about the business requirements around the solutions that we offer, and specifically today we'll go deeper into the contract management piece of it. So here's just kind of a quick overview of some of the solutions that we offer. On the application side on the left, you'll see there's help desk, asset management, there's equipment tracking, facilities management, a lot of request management requirements within an organization. Even down to on the purchasing side or finance side of purchasing requests, and then asset, equipment, inventory management. And then off to the right, you guys will get access to this later, so I won't read all these bullet points, so you guys can take a look at this later after the fact of some of the projects we've done in the past. Now, let's jump right into contract renewal management. Now, I also want to focus on and emphasize the fact that this is renewal management of existing contracts rather than the sort of end-to-end life cycle of a contract, from the contract creation process to execution to the termination of that contract. So this is really about managing your existing contracts and the renewal of those contracts. So before we get started though, one of the sort of the stats that stuck out to us as we were building out this deck and collecting some data is we also recently wrote a blog article you can find on our site about managing contract renewals. Is that the Gartner Group, what they found in their research is that 60% of all supplier contracts are automatically renewed without the knowledge of the buyer, and this is mostly due to the fact that the buyer really has no idea and visibility into when the renewal date is, and so they just automatically get renewed. They're on the hook for another term, whether that be 3, 6, 12 months. And so what we want to do is show you how we can get visibility into that and avoid this. I know that just personally, every once in a while you have a cable contract that comes up and you're unaware of the fact that there is some end date and it just auto-renews, and then you just, at that point, you say, okay, why not? We're going to stick with these guys for another term. So let's talk about, what, as we get into the demo, what are the things that we're going to show you. So the most important thing is getting these contracts into a database. What we find when we talk to customers that are interested in sort of getting organized in this fashion with contract renewal and kind of understanding, how they actually get a system in place is that we ask them, well, what are you doing today? So it kind of runs the gamut. You have spreadsheets. There's some of these that are stored in a network drive somewhere, some file of contract, file that exists on the network somewhere. Sometimes they're even in just people's inbox in email, and so they can be all over the place. Sometimes in paper format and in a file cabinet. So it's really about what are you doing today? How do we collect all that, the contracts, get them to actual database, and then from there we can drive automation. We gain visibility, flexibility, reporting. Now I'm going to kind of key in on this flexibility thing just so I can explain myself on what we mean by flexibility. So flexibility is, there's two parts of flexibility. One is the configuration capabilities of the system. So we've created a no-code solution. This is built on SharePoint, and so we've created a no-code solution to be able to administer a lot of the features, the feature set that we have today, and that goes from the workflows around approvals, customizing forms, creating forms, a lot of different aspects of the program. Now, there's also this other component that we bring to flexibility is that we have a number of different solutions that we offer that integrate nicely into the contract management solution. And I'm going to show you, you'll see aspects of that in the demo. And that means there's a contract, it's tied to an asset or a piece of equipment. Well, how do you do that when you're looking at the contracts? And this is about, say it's some Dell lease agreement for some number of hardware that you've leased. We can get visible, we can connect that to our asset management solution, and so you can go in and get visibility into those assets in that asset database as well, and or equipment, and or purchase requests, and or whatever. There's a number of different solutions that integrate nicely into our solution. Now, the contract renewal process is this, again, kind of moving away from, hey, I have a spreadsheet, there's a number of sort of columns and fields where we're collecting this data, to get over into this system that has things like, the database itself, alerts and notifications, the approval workflows, and then, how do we actually, what does it mean to us in terms of we actually get to renewals? Is it approvals? Is there auto renewals? How do we get from the fact that we have a contract, there is a term, and then are we going to renew? Are we not going to renew? Are we going to renegotiate? But ultimately, is to figure out, do we renew or do we not renew? Now, automation for us is important in the fact that it's really about saving you time and money, making sure that things happen behind the scenes that aren't dependent on human interaction, and that's all the workflow pieces of this, things that happen based on some field value and or some business conditions, and they happen automatically. And then visibility into what contracts you have. We can search and sort by department, by type, by category, and we can drill down on sort of values of contracts. So this is really getting visibility into all that data. And then flexibility. We talked about flexibility, and it's just it's really about the system being able to be tweaked to your particular business requirements, and then tying into other systems as well. So reporting, this is just an example of a report, but it's really about getting visibility into the contract information and data, the metadata about a contract, parsing that out, and making that data meaningful. So all right, well let's get right into the demo. Let's show you what we have, and while we're doing this, as we get into the demo, I'd encourage you guys to just go ahead and post some questions. We do these demos all the time as we do one-on-one demos. We're only going to go into kind of a high-level overview of what we have as opposed to going to the granular details of the program. And so this is really about giving you a flavor of what we have and encouraging you to circle back with us and get a sort of more in-depth demo. But while we're in this demo, if you have questions, please ask and allow us to address those. So I'm going to jump out of this presentation.
Did you want to pop up a poll at this point, or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
There's a couple polls that we've created, and Scott, let me go ahead and I'll do this first one. And so we do these, and as we pop up these polls, thanks for the reminder, by the way. As we pop up these polls, it helps us to one sort of spark some thoughts, and then as well as see if you can see my screen, see that poll up there. In which environment do you currently work? So not only to kind of understand where you guys are today currently, but also in the context of where you are today, we can address the fact that we do have solutions that can help you regardless of where you're at.
It's always good to know what environment, whether people are in Office 365 or SharePoint 2013, 2016. That's always good to know. Of course, the program runs in all versions of SharePoint that are listed, so that's not an issue, but it's good to know what people are using, right? Right, Jeff?
Yep, absolutely. So I can see people are still voting. Just takes 2 seconds here. Just select the environment that you guys are in today, and we'll go ahead and close this off in about 5 seconds, and we'll show you the results. It's always interesting for us too, because we know the market trends. We talk to people every day. We're deeply embedded in the SharePoint community as well as with Microsoft, and so your responses here align with what the trends are in the marketplace as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close off this poll. You'll see here. So I mean, this again, it aligns with the trends. And Scott, I mean, I think that you would agree that 2013, a lot of people have now obviously moved off 2010 and on to 2013. We know 2016 is available. People are still kind of trying to figure out, sort of migration paths there, and or if there's value for them to do it. But there's a trend of companies that we talk to that are moving over to Office 365. And so that's, again, this aligns with what we see in the marketplace as well. So I'm going to hide the results. All right, so what we're looking at here is our landing page for contract renewal management. So, and this is highly configurable. It is SharePoint. One of the things that the beauty why we like SharePoint is the fact that this can be what you need it to be. So we've given you a sample configuration of a landing page where there's a list view here of contracts. You can always jump in here and search and sort. You want to go in and search, say, show me all contracts by vendor, by value, by type of contract, status, all active contracts. You want to drill down, say active contracts that are with a particular vendor, you can do that. But you can also say, well, I want to utilize this front page to show me a high-level overview of what's going on as a workspace. So you got these tiles and dials. You have some reporting off here to the right, which you can then take these reports. You can drill down into these as well. But then there also could be maybe this concept of having a number of custom views of, you want to say, show me, like views of all contracts with IT or HR, etc. So this is how we have configured it out of the box, but you have a lot of flexibility in creating the environment that's going to work best for you. All the components are there. Now, before we get started too in the demo, I want to talk about the fact that we've been working in SharePoint for many, many years, and what we're showing you today is really based on a layer that we've added to SharePoint. So in that layer, in the on-prem world, it's a bundle of web parts that help with the UI, the reporting and BI, as well as business process and workflow. So there's a bundle of web parts that sit behind this that provide this enhanced functionality. In the Office 365 world, and there is, just by the way, there is an Office 365 solution that looks very similar to what we have here, and we built a suite of apps that make up sort of that layer in the Office 365 environment. Now, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go right over here. We'll just go to the contracts list, and and I'll show you that there is a list, the same thing that we're looking at here. And again, here's a list, a master list of all contracts. And so you can come in here and you can see that there's a number of columns that we have across the top that we've input here, and you can customize this view to be whatever you need it to be. But you do have all the common search and sorting capabilities that that exist within SharePoint. Now, as we're looking at the master list, what I want to do is kind of dive deeper into why getting away from a spreadsheet, which is, this is very spreadsheet-esque, other than the fact that we can, you can filter and search in spreadsheets as well. But let's go in and look at what the form looks like and the actual data around that for each contract item. And so this again represents, this is another Crow Canyon solution that we built, is our forms manager that allows you to build custom forms. And you can see here that we have this tabbing structure here across the top that allows you to sort of segment the form to be able to collect data in a sort of a more intelligent way, as opposed to having just one long form. Now, this contract itself, this is a Dell master lease agreement. And there's some number of details around this in a general sense, meaning, is it active? Yes, it's active. It's a lease agreement. What vendor? Now this vendor, you'll see that's a link, and this link comes from this vendor list over here. We'll show you in a second how those things are connected. Then there's the start and expiration date, which these are important because we'll trigger workflows off this expiration date. So when the renewal is coming up, we can then configure this renewal based on each contract, what that renewal option might be, and or how you want to approach the renewal. In this case, we have there is a 1-year auto extension, and we have enabled to allow auto renewal. So what we can do in this case, that's just a use case itself, is to say on the expiration date, say 30, 60, 90 days prior, let's go ahead and send Jeff Priest a notification that this contract is up for renewal, but there's no action required because we have enabled auto renewal. Now, if auto renewal was not enabled and we didn't want to select a renewal option, or even if we did have a renewal option, we would still want to trigger, for example, a notification or an alert at whatever intervals prior to this expiration date, to say 30, 60, or 90 days, or all of the above. Go ahead and send Jeff Priest an alert or a notification to take action. And when we do that, so there'll be a notification to take action, but there also can be triggered an approval process or workflow, and those approval process can be customized based on whatever business criteria. It could be based on the value of the contract, it could be based on the vendor, it could be based on department, etc. So we can build out, I'll show you a sample of what that is. So as we look through these tabs, you'll see that we have the ability to collect information. So this could be a PO number, could be also like an invoice, original invoice number for that. You can see payment terms, so you get some visibility, currency type. If actually, if I go into edit mode, you'll see as these fields open up that you can custom create the different field types in the form, and so they can be drop-down menus. It can be 80 people picker fields. So there's a number of ways in which these fields, as you create them, whether they be radio buttons or check boxes, you can configure and customize this form. As we get to approvals, we have the ability to create any type of an approval workflow that you would require for different contract types. So in this case, there's this concept of sequential or parallel approvals. So sequential being that we're going to send it to a person, which then will go to the next individuals in line on based on sort of levels. Now it could be a parallel approval where you can say, I just need someone to approve it. There's 3 people that are out there that can approve it. Once that person, any one of those 3 approve it, go ahead and mark this as approved. So you can see that when we create this workflow on the back, there's these approval tasks that get kicked off. In this case, there were 2 levels of approval that needed to be done, and the first approver had approved it. Then it automatically went to the second approver, and we've kept a record here of the approval tasks and the fact, and also as the the status of those. We'll also want to attach the documents. So these documents will sit in a document library, but we've connected these and brought these in a view so we can have access in the contract record to those original and or addendums and or future contracts that would be involved perhaps in a renewal. There's also this concept of milestones. Now, not all contracts have milestones, but we have many customers that have had this requirement where there might be payment milestones in some type of service contract where there would be an upfront payment, some type of milestone payment or progress payments along the way, and a final payment. So we can go ahead and document those, assign somebody to those as a responsible party, and we can make, in terms of the fields that are in that milestone, we can customize those to be whatever you need to do in terms of collection of data as well as actions that we would create on top of that. And then milestones themselves could be not just payment related, but they could be actual project milestones that you want to track as well. Now let's get out of edit mode, because this doesn't show very well in the edit mode in terms of the association. So we have, again, we talk about this layer that we have on top of SharePoint, and one of the things that we have is an associated items or a linked items solution or utility. And what that allows us to do is to link this item with other items in SharePoint. In this case, cross lists, cross libraries, and in this case we have this contract is a Dell lease agreement, and there happens to be a number of assets that we have that fall under that lease agreement. So we want to know what assets do we have under this lease agreement. And it happens to be that this is integrated, this solution right here is integrated with our asset management solution. And so these are these 4 assets, or 5 assets if we include software down here, and we can see the details of each one of those assets. If we wanted to jump over and further investigate, for example, we're looking to renew this lease agreement. We want to know, well, has this been a performing asset? Do we want to get rid of this? Do we want to retire it? Do we want to go with another vendor? We can jump over to this asset and we can see more details of this asset. So we can see exactly what this asset is. We can see some history around anything that's problematic from even our ticketing. It's integrated with our ticketing system, so you can even see here that all of the requests that have come in. We can see a lot of details about this asset just simply by going into the asset database. You can see here are the requests. Here's what from our asset management solution. Now also you can see all the software manuals, but at the bottom here you'll see the contracts that are associated with that asset. So you can see, yes, it is connected to that lease agreement that we just came from, but also there's a warranty agreement. It is active. It does expire in 2019, and so we can glean some information by just through the connections, but it's also important if you have contracts and they're associated with equipment or assets or other items that you might want to keep track of. This system is capable of doing that. And so let's actually jump back over into that contract record. Another thing too is there is a lot. Email is still sort of a common way in which we like to communicate, and so we do keep track and collect all email communication, both incoming and outgoing. So as there internal discussions about this contract as it comes up for renewal, or maybe there's an addendum midstream, we can keep track of all of the communication, email communication here within this record as well. And then perhaps there's just notes that you want to add in the contract itself, the contract record, and there's the ability to keep notes in there. Now you can see in the ribbon here at the top there's some other functions too. So there's the ability to send email directly from and if I click on this, you'll see that there is a template for email, and so this will capture some information around who is it to. It's somebody that's responsible for this contract. There's this unique identifier here, and there's some history here of previous email communication, and we can go ahead and send an email out. Now when we do that, this unique identifier will stay in that subject line, and that's what will will be the unique identifier that appends that communication here. Now also there's this print option, so we also have a print capability where if you wanted to print out all the details of this contract, you can just simply come in here and print. There's templates you can create that if you want to just capture some of this information within the contract item, then you can just print. You can print that. It could be print to a PDF. It can be, it can just print it out and in paper format, etc. So there's some other some things in the top ribbon that become useful. Now, as we're looking at this record, you can see we talked earlier about this link. So this link is, in this case, the vendor happens to be Dell, and we've selected that because we have a vendor list over here. So in this field, when we go into edit mode, there's a drop down of all the vendors that are listed there. So what I want to do is just jump right over to the vendor section. So in managing contracts, it's also important to understand, well, who are the vendors that we're working with, that we're dealing with, and also from a reporting standpoint, and we'll get to that in just a moment, from a reporting standpoint, how do we correlate the contracts with the vendors? We might want to generate a report saying, show me all contracts based on vendor, or show me all contracts with Dell, show me all contracts with Dell, and then the total value of all those contracts. So all that data exists, and it's about using a report engine, a report center, to then generate reports, so you can start maybe perhaps as you look at one of those reports and you understand that you have a lot of and from a contract value standpoint, there's a lot of contracts and a lot of spend with a particular vendor, that will actually give you some insights into whether or not you have the ability to negotiate better terms. So there's a lot that you can do with. So if we go into Dell, let's just go in here. So this is the vendor list. As we get into looking at a vendor in particular, Dell, then we can see that we have some basic contact information. This is really just a vendor record with some contact info. But we also can say, well, let's look at all things related to Dell. So we can say, in this case, these are all the contracts we have, and we'll just say if you had 20, 30, 50, 100 contracts with a particular vendor, they're all going to show up here. We can do a calculation of total values, total spend. We can come in and we can look a little bit closer about what those contracts are. Do we have any duplication through different departments? Is there somebody in in another department that also has a contract that we can piggyback on? So all that information is here. You can also see, we talked about the integration with other solutions that we have to offer, that within that vendor, it also shows, what are all the assets, both hard assets, physical assets, and software assets, or equipment, whatever that might be. So we can start tying everything together. So when we go to the vendor itself, you can say, what's everything that we have in our system that is related to this particular vendor. And then you can see we've built out, this is a demo. So we've built out some integration points that, even for example in the purchase catalog, what do we buy from this vendor, and what are some of the categories that they play in. So we've had some even catalog items that we have in there with the vendor. So there's a lot of capabilities and flexibility in the system, but primarily from a contract renewal standpoint, as a contract is going to be renewed, do we need to reach out to the vendor, to our contact person? Again, what contracts do we have, and how does that influence our business decision? So as we're going through this, I'm going through fairly quickly. It's there's a lot to show, but I also want to leave some time for Q&A. We found that sort of attention span during these are generally in the 40-45 minute area. So I want to kind of get through this, and if you do get 15 minutes back to your day, that's great. But I want to make sure I show you enough. But also, if there's some questions that come through, let's address those as well as we're going towards the end of this presentation. Now, as we as sort of the next level of this, go ahead, Scott.
Well, yeah, we've had a few questions which I managed to answer inside the screen, mostly about Office 365. One was asking about a policy of contract over a certain amount, that we can manage the contracts differently depending on, say, how much they are, what kind of vendor it is, or what kind of contract it is, that kind of thing. And also, I think you have been pointing out how much this contract system ties into assets. It could be IT assets, it could be equipment, vehicles, furniture, it could be building. I mean, the contract management can stand by itself, or it can be something that's very highly tied in, like you're showing here, into other aspects of our system, such as equipment, assets, IT, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I said just want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that question around, and I know there was some about, does it work with SharePoint in the cloud or Office 365? Yes, it does. But this question about policies around contracts over a certain amount, are those handled differently than ones, under a designated amount? So yes, so there we can have, based on, we can trigger off particular workflows to, based on a policy or based on some business rules to handle these types of contracts differently. So the data exists within the contract, so there'll be some contract amount field, and based on that contract amount field, we want to take some action. So yes, we have what we call our Crow Canyon workflow manager, and based on those sort of business rules, we can trigger, certain types of policies, and actions and or tasks and or whatever it might be that you want to do based on some thresholds. So the answer is yes. So that does provide a lot of flexibility. We do understand that there's, a warranty for an Apple iPhone at like, $199 is a different type of transaction than an SAP consulting contract that might be a couple $100,000. And so, you want to look and analyze and approach those differently. And so we can build those policies and workflows up front based on whatever your business rules are. So
right.
So let's go. And there's more questions coming in here, but what I want to do is we'll address those, and I want to go over and show you from a reporting standpoint sort of the capabilities around reporting and looking at and these. So please keep your questions coming in. So I see them coming in, and I do want to address each one of those. So from a reporting perspective, here's sort of the general rule of thumb here is if you collect data in the system, whether it be vendors or within the contract record, then we can report on it. So whether it be the amounts. So in this case, we'll just look, contracts by owner. So there's an owner field of a responsible party, and so we can track that. So we can say, show me all contracts by owner. And in this case, you can see these are all the contracts by owner and when they expire throughout the year. So if somebody were to manage, contracts looking at that, they know these upcoming, they can always just go ahead and drill down and click on these. You can see the people down here and how they're color coded. But also, if we scroll down, active contracts by type. There could be, here's the total contract value by department. If that's interested to understand from a spend perspective, each department, what are the contracts, the value under contract, and we can manage to a particular number. There could be some requirement to reduce spend, and then you'd want to go and you could drill down on these and say, what contracts do we have? Which contracts are we going to renew or what not, based on some budget. So these are just sample charts and reports that we've built. So contracts under review, meaning these are terminating, and they're in the process. We've put the status itself was under review, and so we can jump in. There's 3 contracts under review. We could go, and again, we can drill down in on those and look more specifically at what that contract is. Contracts by vendor. Now, if you have a lot of vendors, obviously this might not be the best chart to create, but in this demo environment, we only have a couple handfuls of vendors, and so we can go ahead and look at these vendors and say, okay, well, Apple, there's Apple in that chart. What are all the contracts that we have with Apple? And then it will show us this list view, and we can continue to drill down on those. And so the sort of sky is the limit when it comes to creating charts and reports. In the dashboard, from us, dashboard means different things to different people, so it could be just a dashboard of charts. And of course, we have the drill down function here, but if I expand this ribbon, there's some other cool features that exist as well to allow you to do some more things with these charts or these reports. So as we expand this ribbon, you can see that they all have some capability of coming in real time. Now, all this data that I'm presenting here is all a real-time view of data. If you want to come and change the parameters and say, show me this data based on some time period, last year, last quarter, last week, last month. We can do that. We can select based on different fields, and we can apply that and show sort of different data points based on fields. But also you can see we can email it, we can print it, we can export this data to Excel, PDF it for maybe a slide deck, and then we can even do things like setting it on a schedule. So if you have reports that need to go out to some individuals, and say if it's a departmental report and you want to set that up, well, you can come in and you can say, here's a distribution list or some individuals or an individual that needs to receive this, and then we can select the interval. So if it needs to go out monthly, and monthly, what day do we want that to go out? We want to go on the first of each month. We can do that. We can specify different dates. So this will allow you to, most people, when this particular feature itself is something people get excited about, going, great, I can automate sending out reports, so I don't have to wait for my boss to ask me to do it. And of course, I'm going to have to remember to do it, instead of putting it as a calendar item or a task. You can just set this, and this is part of sort of the automation built into the system. Now, let's go into real quickly and go into how these reports are created. So we do have a report center. It's very easy to come in and select columns, these rows and fields, things that you want to compare, data you want to compare, and we can do that. Just name the report. Here's an example over here. If you just say contracts by vendor, this will show you what that looks like. So this is we can create as many reports as we want. They're all going to show up here. This is the report in graphical format. The actual editor that we have in terms of the report generator looks like this, and so you can easily come in and say, this is one I want to go into this contracts list. I want to look at contracts by vendor. I can specify the vendor field, the count of how many, and then the type of chart we want to do. We just simply create it. And when we do that, we have a report. Now, once we have those reports, they can all be saved here, but we can also build those reports, as I showed you, and show them in dashboard format. So you can create specific dashboards for people to view, and you can permission those dashboards as well. So you can say there's a departmental dashboard for each department, and so you want to say, I don't want the IT group seeing the HR dashboard, or vice versa. Then that can be done as well. So a lot of sort of permissioning and roles-based capabilities as well. All right, so now as we're coming sort of the tail end of this demo, what I want to do is kind of circle back on some questions here. Now, so one of the so first of all, again, it's there's a lot to show here. There's a lot. We're about 42 minutes after the hour, and so let's spend this last bit of time in talking through some of the questions, and hopefully there we can get some more input from you as well on things that are on your mind, with things that you might want to do or something that you haven't seen. But the intention here is to give you this high-level overview of the capabilities that we have here, but not really dive deep into all the nitty-gritty. We can do that in a one-on-one session, and we can do that really more relevant to your particular business needs. What we found is that every organization is different. There are some commonalities in how people want to work with the system, but every organization is different, and they have different sort of unique business requirements. And so we can really dive deep in on a one-on-one, and we will be reaching out to you after, and hopefully you reach out to us as well, and we can set up some time to do that.
Okay, Jeff. Yeah, there's been some questions about integration with ERP or SAP systems, so that of course there's going to be vendors and other things going on inside of the larger ERP system, and can just coordinate with it. And yes, that's definitely possible, because we have done many customizations between SharePoint and Office 365 with line of business type functionality. ERP is one, also network discovery tools or Salesforce or anything that's used outside of SharePoint. We have the capability and experience of doing integrations. We have applications so-called such and such out of the box, you might say, that people can use, and they're run inside their Office and SharePoint environments quite well. But many times we're asked to integrate with other systems, such as the ones I mentioned, that are part of the organization or the corporation. and we have to synchronize data or pull in data or read data in different ways. In this case, with the vendors, it'd be reading some of the vendor information in a database out there, SAP. One question is about 150,000 names in there. So yeah. So the thing is, that's possible. It's a lot, but you could read it. We'd work it out. We'd have a discussion whether we would be reading from the large database of vendors or whether we'd pull them in and make a list in SharePoint and work that way. That's the kind of thing where sort of customization depends on the requirements and how that can be done. But the integration certainly can be done. So that's one point we want to make here. Then there was asked about different, let's see, is the data centralized so everyone regardless of department has access to it? Yeah. Everyone regardless of department can have access to this, right? Jeff, you didn't mention about permissions, how we can permission these sites at many different levels, the site collection level, the site level, the list level, the contract level, even the field and tab level. We can permission it very, very granularly so that only certain people have certain rights to see certain documents or even certain fields on those documents and the rights to read, write, or not even see them. We can be very, very granular with permissions. Different levels of access to different departments, yeah, for sure. We can have that. And there's even another question about permissions is, can we set permissions automatically based on the metadata? And that can be done, yeah, we just read the metadata, and quite often that's the case where part of our workflows is looking at metadata. I mean, that's in a sense what the workflow manager does, and the alert, we're looking at metadata on the tickets, or on the contracts, or on the records, and then taking appropriate actions. And one of those actions can be setting permissions. We have other actions like send an email or update an item or create a new item. But these are all based on certain factors or conditions on the contract or on the metadata about the contract itself. So, but I like these interactive demos where I can say, did that answer your question? I'm not going to get any answer because these webinars are like that. So that's why we like to have one-on-one. Hopefully that answered your question, and be glad to explain much more. Basically, the bottom line, and I think Jeff was pointing to it, is that Crow Canyon's been working with SharePoint and Office 365 for many, many, many years, and we've done all kinds of custom projects that involve integrations or work that integrates this with that or takes action based on that, because we deal with many different kind of business requirements with our many customers around the world. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, so and maybe you answered this already, and so I apologize if you have. But there's some of these questions, you did answer kind of. You went through, I think a lot of these you answered kind of in the same sort of, last sort of statement. But one is, is this offered as a SaaS-based model? Did you answer that question?
You can go ahead.
Yeah, so if it's a SaaS-based model, or would a customer host this in their instance of O365? So it would be the latter. So this is this would be something that sits within your tenant, and would be a site in a site collection in your tenant, or on-prem it would be the same. It would be a site collection. It would be a site installed on your server. So it's not a SaaS-based solution per se, but when it's cloud and it's out there in your tenant, then I guess if you want to look at it that way as a cloud-based solution, then it is. But it's not a standalone SaaS offering. It would be actually installed in your tenant or on your server. So anyway, so we have, the questions keep coming in, and we know there's a question saying that they're about contract database, and that's kind of throughout the organization in different locations, and is there a way to do a data dump of these, or we'll have to upload each contract manually? So there are different ways to pull that data from many different data sources and import that data, and we can talk about that more specifically in a one-on-one. We do have some import tools that will help you to import, sort of do a data dump of what you guys have. There might be, once we've done that initial data dump and pull that in as an import and populated many of the fields that would be in a record, there might be some other data that you might want to collect, and so you can certainly expand out from there, but there are ways in which we can simplify the import process regardless of where that data resides today. So right now, I guess in sort of wrapping things up, let me jump back into my power just to kind of show you some sort of ways in which you can contact us, and let me go back here and throw this screen up, and I'm not sure if Scott, sometimes it doesn't work exactly how I'd like it to, but
Yeah, no, it's coming up. But no, these are great questions, and it's really it's interesting to see the interest that's going on here with our with this contract renewal. It grew out of our asset and equipment development work we were doing, and people were asking about keeping track of licenses, lease agreements, warranties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we built it up. Now, as far as bringing together, we can pull in information from different sources, to populate vendor lists or other information. The other thing is we also do with our, for instance, our purchase order system, where you can do a purchase request. It can issue a request to the procurement to issue a purchase order to pay for the new contract, for example, from the contract renewal. We can set it up in a way to initiate, if it needs renewal, to initiate a purchase order to go ahead and make that renewal. That's one thing. Did you mention the auto renew also option there, Jeff? I think
yeah,
you did.
we kind of briefly covered that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different capabilities. Now, perhaps there's some things that we haven't thought of that you guys might need, and
Sure.
that's the feedback that we need or that we like to improve the product. This product itself wasn't really built in a vacuum. It's built on, for one, sort of market research, looking at sort of the competitive landscape out there and other solutions and what they offer, but also getting sort of a continuous feedback loop that exists with our customers as they come back and say, hey, can you do this? How about this or how about that? Based on their business requirements. And so we have baked a lot of that feedback in, and we continue to enhance the program based on feedback. But a lot of the feedback, when we get feedback, it's, hey, I need this feature. And many times it's already there, it's built in, it just needs some configuration, and then we can help with that in creating that sort of solution or environment with the layer that we already have in place to provide that functionality. Now, so I'm showing on my screen some ways in which you can stay in touch with us. We have, a great blog section on the website, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, however, what your sort of preferred method in sort of engaging with us might be. There's a lot of content that exists on the website and the blogs too that might be interesting. I think we just released a new blog article about contract management yesterday. But we'd love to talk to you, and so if this has been interesting and you see some value in what we've shown you today, we'd like to do a deeper dive, and it'd be great if you reach out to us. There's a phone number on our website as well, so you can go there.
Where's the phone number? Phone number's supposed to be on this slide, I think.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Type
But
it in quickly.
we'll get that updated. But we'll also send you a follow-up email. You'll receive a link to this recording, so you can go back and revisit it. But we'll look forward to speaking with you individually. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We thank you for your time and attention, and we hope to connect with you soon. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
And happy holidays.